All right, well, welcome to this lesson. This is going to be the lesson for chapter 13. I'm loading this one a little bit late, so really this is going to help those who missed any time last week or again, you want to review. So the bell work for today, and we're just going to jump right into it, guys, because, you know, we can. The bell work for today is this. What are the three parts of the Monroe Doctrine? Now, we talked about that at the end of lesson 12. The Monroe Doctrine basically has three parts to it. Go ahead and work on that bell work. Go ahead and pause the video, work on it, and make sure that you have that. Put your heading on it as well. Okay. Hopefully you've done it. If not, just work on it for next time. This is a very important concept that will most likely be showing up somewhere on your STAR exam this year, so make sure that you're familiar with that. Okay, today again we're going to go over chapter 13 notes. We're going to do the vocabulary builder and the primary source activity. Make sure that you get this done when you come back, when you get ready to turn that in. This will definitely be due. This lesson, some classes did it on the 10th, some of them did it last week before that. So the Friday previous, what would that be, the 7th? So April 7th or April 10th, depending on what class you're in, you would have done this, this lesson. Again, this is the Monroe Doctrine lesson, also talking about the age of Jackson. The reason we talk about the age of Jackson, we really talk about 4 presidencies in this lesson, but we call it the age of Jackson because how Jackson got to the White House is a story. Him being in White House is a story, and then the aftermath, the path or the remnants of his presidency is also a big story. So it really can all be tied to Jackson and his viewpoints or something done to him. It's just all, you know, he's definitely the protagonist in this story. I would think, but we'll see how this works. Okay, the election of 1824, what I call affectionately as the double cross. You have 3 candidates, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, and John Quincy Adams. And here we have a picture. At the top, we have Andrew Jackson, and at the bottom, we have Henry Clay. John Quincy Adams is not pictured. But John Quincy Adams, this is the son of John Adams, the former president. And here we have his son wanting to be the president. So that'd be kind of cool. You know, dad and son and dad being president, kind of like the Bush dynasty, the President Bush and his son, President Bush. Anyway, and then we have what's called a plurality because Jackson wins a plurality of the vote. This is not a majority. If you win a majority, that's 50% plus 1. A plurality is where you do get more votes than anybody else, but you never reach a full majority. You just reach part of that vote. As an example, if we had 200 votes total, if you got 80, another candidate got 60, and another candidate got 60, that's 200 votes. You got more than candidate B and C, but you didn't win a full majority. That's called a plurality. And in the Constitution, when candidates get a plurality, it goes to the House of Representatives. In this case, that's exactly what happened. It went to the House of Representatives to be decided, but Henry Clay is the Speaker of the House, and he works out a deal with John Quincy Adams and said, listen, if you give me a job when you get to be president, I will make sure that you get the votes you need to be president. Well, Adams won the election. And John Quincy Adams gives Henry Clay the job of Secretary of State, a very esteemed position, which sets him up very nicely and very pretty for a future presidential run to be the president. Andrew Jackson isn't happy. So when it comes around in 4 years and John Quincy Adams is up for re-election, guess who we see? That's right, Andrew Jackson. And he's not happy. And the gloves come off and they sling mud at each other, verbally, not physically. They make fun of each other. They talk bad about each other. This is the time period where Andrew Jackson is being called, we'll just say a donkey. Okay, and it's why a donkey is used for the Democratic Party to this day. It started in this time period because Andrew Jackson started to become a donkey. But here's the problem: they meant it as an insult, but he thought it was a good thing. He said, "Oh yeah, hey, I'll take that, man. I'm proud of that, of being stubborn and bullheaded. Yeah, that's right. That's who I am." Strangely enough. During the campaign, both sides started mudslinging, using slogans, buttons, rallies, just anything they could to get their point across. It was also during this election that the Democratic-Republican Party split into two parts, and one part of it becoming just the Democratic Party that we know and love today. All right, yeah. So President Jackson. Let me make sure I didn't miss something. Let me see. Sorry, guys. Yeah, no, okay, I'm good. I'm not sure why. Yeah. Sorry, okay. Technical difficulties. We're good. Sorry about that. All right, so President Jackson, when he comes into office, he's got really three main priorities. The first one is to destroy the national bank. The second one is to destroy Native Americans and their culture. And that sounds weird, but you'll see really Jackson was always after Native Americans. He defeated the Creeks. He defeated the Seminoles down in Georgia and pushed them into Florida without permission, mind you. Remember, he did that without any presidential instruction or anything from the military commander saying that that's what we want you to do. He just did it. And I'm thinking, well, if you just did it, that means you rather enjoyed it. You didn't need to have anybody twist your arm. But he wanted to destroy them. And he continues to do so when he becomes president. And he surrounds himself with friends. Yes, he does. Now, here's this picture of the Native American there, what I would assume to be the chief. It's a great quote. It says, or not quote, but a poem. It says, "When the blood in your veins returns to the sea, and the earth in your bones returns to the ground, perhaps then you will remember that this land does not belong to you. It is you who belongs to the land." See, Native Americans, they didn't agree or believe in property ownership. They didn't think you could own the land. But the Americans had a different thought. And so Andrew Jackson, when he gets into office, institutes something that will become known as the spoils system. The spoils system. This is where Andrew Jackson hires many of his friends and fires federal workers so that, he can give them the hookup. And so he places a lot of people into key positions in his administration, and it became known as the kitchen cabinet, kind of, again, another jab to insult him, but that's what it became known as. Now, this picture to the left, you can see that Andrew Jackson is riding into the White House riding a pig who is trampling on some items. We'll look at it closely in a minute. And then it says underneath, it says, "To the victors belong the spoils." Well, hey, I won the presidency. I should be able to do what I want to. And so the pig always representing something of greed, overindulgence, corruption, fatness, wealth in a negative way. It's not a good representation. So he's riding into the White House on a pig, and he's trampling on things of, on the road to bribery and fraud and plunder, all things that he was being accused of, and over skulls. Remember, he got famous, Andrew Jackson got famous because he was, good at defeating Native Americans. That's what he got good at, the death of Native Americans and the British. That's why he's famous. That's why we know him. And that's why he's president. All right. At this time, there are 5 civilized tribes: the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Muskogee, or the Cree, same tribe, the Chickasaw, and the Seminole. These 5 tribes, because, they thought, listen, the Americans, Europeans, whoever, they've been trying to kill us for years, hundreds of years. Let's just assimilate. Let's just try to become more like them, and maybe they won't want to kill us. So these 5 tribes all kind of took that position and became known as the 5 civilized tribes because they were acting just like white farmers. Didn't work. President Jackson supported white settlers taking that land more than he appreciated anything that the Native Americans were doing. And because of this, because he wanted that land to be settled by white Americans. It really caused issues for the Native Americans for these next few years. Americans wanted them to move to the Great Plains because they thought the Great Plains were, that's land nobody wants anyway. Move them out there. Of course, this land is going to be very coveted in the next 10 to 20 years. But for now, people really, really just want to get rid of these Native Americans. So much so that in 1830, the Indian Removal Act was passed by Congress. Now, this did allow Americans to pay Native Americans for land so that they could kick them out of their land. But the problem was Native Americans didn't want to go. They said, "This is our land. These are our homes. Why are you making us leave? We don't want to go." But the government did it anyway. 1834, Congress establishes what's called the Indian Territory in the area of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, this area. And it basically creates a little bitty pocket, a little bitty square, a little bitty territory that we can shove all of these Native Americans into so that they're out of our way. Just put them in this little area, and then we can do whatever we want with the rest of the land. Not really a great moment in U.S. history, in my opinion. But 1835, so now we're a year later, even after that, the federal government convinces a small group of Native Americans in the Cherokee to come and sign a treaty that said that they were going to vacate land in 1838. Again, there's a problem. The problem is these people weren't in charge. They didn't have any title or have any authority to sign this treaty. And so when Chief John Ross comes up and he says, "Hey, these people don't represent us. They don't have any authority to do this," U.S. government just ignores them. It says, "Hey, Cherokee signed it. It's legal. It's binding. Get out." But by 1838, only 2,000 Cherokee had moved into this area. So by 1838, the U.S. it's clear that we are going to need to use military force to get them out, and that's what we did. So we send General Winfield Scott and 7,000 of his soldiers to go down and take care of this Cherokee issue in North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, to get these Native Americans out of this area and get them to move to the Indian Territory. That's the goal. Well, they bring them all into these camps before they take them all the way to the Indian Territory from these states. They put them in camps. Over 2,000 die in the camps just from illness before they even moved them. They were already dying off because they got sick and malnourished, and not a great thing. Now in class we did watch a video about the treaty signing, and just to learn a little bit about the mentality behind this treaty and why people would sign the treaty. We're not going to watch it now, but no, that's what we watched. You can feel free to look up on YouTube and watch that video. Okay. The Treaty of Echota, also pronounced by some Ecota. So sometimes Ecota, sometimes Echota, depending on which source you listen to. I'll probably say Echota most of the time. But in this treaty, after this treaty was signed and the U.S. honored it, they started evacuating these Native Americans into this big line of people, thousands, hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of people, basically. I think as much as 10 to 15,000 people moving on this trail. Well, 2,000 of them died because they're hungry, it's freezing, they're cold, children die, old people die, different reasons, but it's just not a pleasant experience. And people were, devastated to see their loved ones dying in front of them. And so they would refer to this as the trail where they cried. Historians look back later and they call this place this event the Trail of Tears. So if you ever hear about the Trail of Tears, that's where it came from. That's where it came from. Now the Seminole, we got to get rid of them too. Not just the Cherokee, we got to get rid of the Seminole. They're down in Florida. Hey, Florida belongs to us. We need to get rid of them. And so in 1835, 30,000 U.S. troops go down to Florida, and evacuate them from that land. But they fought back. 3,000 Seminole and African Americans, what were known as Black Seminole, these are African Americans that escaped the slave trade or escaped slavery, went down to Florida and stayed with the Seminoles. Well, they all banded together and they fought back against the U.S. troops. Now, they didn't win, but it was definitely a noble thing. So the Seminole that survived, they went ahead and went down to the Indian Territory like the U.S. government wanted them to. But in 1858, very few of them, just a handful of them really, remained, and they went down to Florida into the Everglades, in the swampy area. Today, even you can see people down there of the Seminole line, Seminole bloodline. And FSU, their mascot is the Seminoles, for this reason, to honor these people who fought so bravely just to keep their home. Okay, the Dawes Act. This fast forwards a little bit. This is the act passed in 1887. This is after the Civil War. And the Dawes Act really served to isolate and to chip away at the Native American way of life. The government wanted to destroy the tribal system by isolating people from each other. You know, you can see this flyer here. They're selling, they're advertising that, hey, this is land that we've taken away from the Native Americans. It's great land. You want it. It's cheap. Come and get it. So it's another way of just really eroding that way of life. And this picture here, it's a political cartoon, but you see the Dawes Act chomping away at the Native American lands, cutting it up and destroying it, which is sad to see, but hey, that's what happened. The election of 1836, now we're off to the next election. During his second term, Andrew Jackson got rid of the National Bank, which was one of his primary goals, if you remember. He had the opportunity to sign the new charter to make it go into another term or another, extension, but he said, nope, I'm going to veto this, and we're not going to have a national bank. I don't really understand this, because the last time we got rid of the National Bank, it was financial ruin and destruction, and here he does it again, and we have the same exact thing happen. Well, it's not up to him to fix. Oops, sorry. Make sure that you're watching that. It's a good video. And think about the legacy that he left behind. So again, we have Martin Van Buren creating a federal treasury, which isn't a national bank. It's more like a holding tank for money, but it does create the early Treasury Department that we know today, which is working for us for the time being. And we see a new political party emerging in the election of 1840. So now we have a new party, the Whig Party. I always love this sign. It says, they couldn't possibly be worse. Let's vote for the Whig Party. It just sounds weird. It's not really the pros. It's just saying, well, we're not them, so that means we're okay. How bad must things have been, right? The new Whig Party supported a candidate named William Henry Harrison. And William Henry Harrison, if you can remember back to the War of 1812, he is the one that won the Battle of Tippecanoe. Okay, the Battle of Tippecanoe. And he's running with John Tyler for the vice president. So William Henry Harrison wants to be president. John Tyler wants to be vice president. And this is their campaign slogan: Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. They would chant it. It was a really catchy slogan because William Henry Harrison, the hero of Tippecanoe, and then Tyler, his running mate. So that's why that worked. That's why it worked. And this campaign flyer that you would see, this poster you would see posted up, has that slogan, Tippecanoe and Tyler too. It has his name, William Henry Harrison, for the President of the United States, 1840. But you also see a picture of Harrison and a little log cabin. And the reason that log cabin was there was because people were actually making fun of him. His opponent was making fun of him, saying, oh, this country bumpkin who's out there sitting on his porch with a straw in his mouth, chewing on a piece of straw, basically, just collecting his government pension. And Harrison turned it around. He flipped it on him. He said, that's right. That is me. You got me. I am a man of the people. I'm just a regular guy. And you, Van Buren, are the rich, wealthy snob who doesn't care about the people. And he spun it on them. And that is really the nature of politics going forward from here. And then during the election, after all this back and forth, Harrison won the election, sort of. Harrison actually wins, but catches pneumonia because he gives this crazy long speech, dies 32 days later from pneumonia. And John Tyler becomes the first vice president to become president after the death of the previous president. So there's definitely a first for our nation. And finally, we have President Zachary Taylor in 1848. Zachary Taylor is going to be really involved in this war against Mexico, between the U.S. and Mexico, that we'll talk about in chapter 14. It's actually already posted that video, so if you look at that video, you'll be able to see a little bit more about Zachary Taylor's involvement. But he, at this point, becomes the candidate, the front runner, and wins the election of 1840, but he also dies in office, kind of putting an end to the Whig Party, not just because of this, but other factors. The Whig Party goes away and the Republican Party takes its place, and it is the Republican Party that we know today. And that is chapter 13. Zachary Taylor actually dies after drinking ice milk and fresh fruit for dinner, and there was some weird stuff that happened when he was treated. He ended up dying in office. And that's how we do this. Whew, finished it. Thank you, Lord.